So far we have seen two types of page replacement, right? One is local page replacement and another one is global page replacement. And I told that local page replacement is used mostly today and global page replacement is never preferred. Why? Let's see this, okay? Why local page replacement is mostly preferred. That's what we are going to see in this video. See, let us assume we have a RAM and it has only 5 frames, right? This is not practically possible. I'm just telling it just to explain the concept very well, right? I cannot take 1024 frames or 2048 frames, right? So that's the reason I'm taking very small number. Fine. And it has been known that process P1 needs a minimum of 6 frames to complete its execution. See, I'm not saying that process P1 has been allocated 6 frames, right? That is not possible practically. Why? Because our RAM itself has only 5 frames. Now, how can I allocate 6 frames to a particular process? That's not possible, right? So, what I'm trying to say is, in order to execute process P1, we need a minimum of 6 frames, right? See, we will know these numbers only during execution. We cannot know these numbers before execution, right? Only during execution we will come to know the exact number of frames we need to complete its execution. See, in case if I give 5 frames to process P1, what will happen? It will lead to thrashing, right? You know that. It will lead thrashing is nothing but repeated number of page faults. We have already seen it, right? We have taken an instruction add ABC and variable A is present in one page, variable B is present in one page, right? So such kind of scenario is still possible. So what they are trying to say is, in case if process P1 has been allocated 6 frames, it will run perfectly without leading to thrashing. In case if you give less than 6 frames, what will happen is it will lead to thrashing. So they have told that the minimum number of frames needed for process P1 to complete its execution without leading to thrashing is 6 frames. Whereas for process P2 it has been known that it needs only 1 frame to complete its execution without leading to thrashing. Similarly for process P3 it has been given that we need 1 frame, right? Fine. See, again I am telling that these things are not allocated. These frames are not allocated. These are the minimum number of frames needed to complete the execution without leading to thrashing. Fine. Now, in case if you are using global page replacement here, what will happen? Let's see this, okay? Coming to the scenario. Coming to the scenario, again one more assumption I want to make here is priority of process P1 is higher than P2 is higher than P3, right? Process P1 has the highest priority, okay? That is my assumption. Now, in this scenario, what will happen here? What will happen here is, since P1 needs 6 frames, what will happen is all these frames will be will be taken by process P1. Why? See, even though initially P2 or P3 has been present over here, what P1 will do is, since it has the highest priority, it will remove process P2's page and it will place its own page. That is what we have seen as dynamic frame allocation, right? What dynamic frame allocation means? Higher priority process pages should always be executed first. So, since P1 has the highest priority, it will take all these frames of RAM, right? Fine. Now, what will happen here is P2 cannot execute because it doesn't have frame. It needs at least 1 frame to complete its execution. So, we didn't give any frame to P2. Similarly, P3 cannot continue its execution. Also, process P1 cannot continue its execution. Why? Because process P1 needs a minimum of 6 frames in order to continue the execution, right? In case if you give less than 6 frames, it will lead to thrashing, right? Which means these pages will be kept on replacing with the pages in the hard disk, with the remaining pages of process P1 inside the hard disk, right? That is what we mean by thrashing. So ultimately here no process is getting executed. See, one thing is for sure, whether we are using local page replacement or global page replacement, process P1 cannot be executed using this setup, right? Why? Because our RAM has only 5 frames, but we need a minimum of 6 frames in order to execute process P1 without leading to thrashing, right? So definitely coming to this setup, process P1 cannot be executed whether we use local page replacement or global page replacement, definitely, right? That is for sure. See, it is very logical, right? Let us assume our RAM has only 1024 frames. Let us assume we have a process which needs at least minimum of 1025 pages in order to complete its execution without thrashing. Now what will happen? That process cannot be executed in the RAM. Why? Because our RAM has only 1024 pages, 1024 frames, but our process needs minimum of 1025 pages to complete its execution without leading to thrashing, right? So definitely such kind of process cannot be executed, that's for sure, whether we are using local page replacement or global page replacement. But in case if you would have used local page replacement, we could have got one more benefit. Why? I'll tell you. See, coming to this, process P1 has taken all these frames. Why this happened? Because we are using global page replacement, right? Which means because a page of process can forcefully take another process's frame, right? That is what we mean by global page replacement. But in case if I would have used local page replacement, what could have happened is, see this, let us assume we have allocated out of these 5 frames, we have allocated 1 frame to process P2 and 1 frame to process P3, right? And the remaining 3 frames we have allocated to process P1. These things we have allocated to P1, these we have allocated to P2, this we have allocated to process P3. Now, process P1 definitely cannot complete its execution because it needs a minimum of 6 frames without leading. It needs a minimum of 6 frames in order to complete execution without leading to thrashing. That's for sure. But coming to process P2, it will be occupied in this frame, and P3 will be occupied in this frame, and P2 and P3 will complete its execution. Why? Here, though priority of process P1 is higher than P2 and P3, P1 cannot take this frame or this frame. Why? Because here we are using local page replacement, right? Coming to local page replacement, a process can only access its own frames, right? It cannot touch other processes' frames. These frames are allocated to P2 and P3, and so process P1 cannot touch any of these frames. So ultimately, though P1 cannot complete its execution, P2 and P3 will complete its execution, right? So fine. So coming to this example, P2 and P3 are at least completing its execution. But coming to this example, P1 is disturbing P2 and P3, right? See, one thing is P1 cannot complete its execution. But coming to this scenario, it is also disturbing other processes P2 and P3, right? Ultimately, no process is completing its execution over here, in case if you are using global page replacement. But in case if you are using local page replacement, though P1 cannot complete its execution, it is not disturbing other processes. Other processes can still continue their execution, right? So this is the reason we always go for local page replacement algorithm. We don't use global page replacement algorithm these days. Okay, fine. Anyway, let's see the types of page replacement algorithms so that you will be able to understand these concepts better.